Welcome to the LumaCast, your premier gateway to the universe of limitless photo editing. Dive into the galaxy of Luminar software and the dynamic world of AI photo editing. Join us weekly for a burst of creativity and the drive to transform your photos with confidence and skill. Broadcasting directly from Clever Photographer headquarters, it's time to welcome your hosts, Jacob Boers and Holly Linton.
Hello, everyone, and we're back for another episode of LumaCast, the podcast where we talk about photography, photo editing, and our beloved Luminar Neo. I'm Holly Linton, your host from Tennessee, and next to me is Jacob Boers, founder of Clever Photographer. How's it going today, Jacob?
Hello, Holly. I am great, and as always, looking forward to our today's episode.
Well, today we're going to be talking about 5 ways that you can start selling your photographs. Get some little side gig going so you have some extra money that you can use to buy some photography gear. So we're saying that you don't really need to be a famous photographer to be able to sell your pictures. What a relief for me to know that. But you need to be findable. So I'm just gonna ask him a bunch of questions about how we can start getting our pictures sold. So what can we do first of all? What would be your first tip?
Great. Well, starting from the beginning, we have some local shop and tourist spots and maybe museums and galleries and even some churches. Actually, I don't know in States, but in UK, they have a little like a visitor center where you can sell stuff. And basically, it's just lots of these little retailers around your home, around your village, around your area where you can sell your photos. So how it works, in my experience, what works really well for this type of photography to sell are small prints. It can be just prints or they can be framed, but generally smaller versions work quite well when it's kind of impulsive buy, more like a souvenir to take home. You know, maybe something like for $5, $10, $15. Just something you put in your bag and you go. What also work really well are postcards or cards. You know, postcards when they print it from the other side where you can write the address and text. That is still quite popular. Or cards where you can actually make the one where you can open them. So that is kind of cool as well. Something I also tried in past are calendars. And actually, as you probably know from the previous episodes, I live in a town called Chichester in the south of England. And there is a massive cathedral here. So I have made calendar for Chichester, for the town, but I have also made separate calendars just for the cathedral, which they sell in their visitor center as well. And that's quite a nice way to also sell your art. So for this specific way of selling your art, you need to be thinking more about souvenirs, impulsive buys, small things people can take away and they can just buy it on a spot. So it's not necessarily like a gallery setting where you're selling your big prints. It's just these little things which you may be selling them with a smaller margin, but because they are in these busy spots, it can go quite quickly up because you sell lots of them.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you're referring to because the town I used to live in was like a famous little Jersey Shore town. So you're saying if you live in a spot where there's something popular, like the cathedral you mentioned, you might have a better ability to sell your stuff in a little local shop because you have a lot of tourism going on. So that sounds like a good idea.
Definitely. Yeah, and I should probably start with the most important thing before you go and approach these little shops. And before you do any of these following points or ideas on how to make money, I think it's really important to start with what you mentioned already. You need to be findable. And first thing I started, obviously, was made a website. We talked about that in the past. But equally important is to be present online. And it can be just Facebook. And post your pictures on your Facebook and then share them around the local groups. So, for example, lots of different towns have things like, let's say, Chichester Photos Group or what's happening in Chichester. And once a week, once a 2 weeks, I share there a really nice picture of the town. And I do this for several months when I moved here. And I also used to do that in Scotland. And when you do it regularly, then when you're going to talk to the gallery or to the local shop or, you know, to the visitor center, most of the time the people already know me or they see my work before or they see my pictures. So I'm not coming completely into the cold conversation. You know, I'm coming in, I'm saying, you know, I photograph, let's say again in Chichester and here are my photos. And most of the time the response is, oh yeah, I've seen your pictures before. They are amazing or that would be great. And it just opens the door and you generally gets the sale. If they have a space and they have an opening for the sales, then this usually helps.
So little by little, get yourself known, kind of initiate yourself into these groups, start sharing your pictures. And before you know it, you'll have the comfort level and get accepted into their store.
Definitely.
Sounds great.
I think it's important not to be upset or sad or disappointed when the first shop say no. Sometimes it's not necessarily for because your pictures are not good. It's just maybe they don't have a space, or that's not what they're thinking about you. Sometimes maybe you have to go to 2, 3, 4, 5 before you get your first sell. But then it just starts to work. And once you get few, you get more and more comfortable. So definitely start with that. And then it can turn up into very interesting little income on a site.
Right, great. On to our second way to start selling your photos would be trying to sell them at markets and fairs. And I've seen a little bit of this in the previous town I lived in also. They would do twice a year an art walk, and it would be all sorts of different crafts and stuff. But there were always a couple photographers there who would you'd have to pop your tent and set everything up and break it down and then set it up again the next day. So I've seen that type of way of selling your pictures. So what else can you add to that?
Markets and fairs. Now, I really enjoy doing that because it has a big tradition here in England. Markets in general, they sell everything from food, clothes, art, everything you can imagine. But it will depend on where you live. Probably, for example, in Czech Republic, markets have no tradition at all, except like a big city like Prague. If you would find a market which is not working and you go there with your photos, you probably not sell much. So it only applies to the places where people get used to the idea that they will go to market and buy stuff. But it does apply here in UK. And from what you're saying, it can work in States. And there is one massive advantage of doing the markets because the items you would be selling are pretty much same as for the shops. It would still be these impulsive buyouts, generally smaller things. But why it works better is because it's one-on-one communication and interaction with the customer, where maybe they're standing in a post office or the visitor center, they don't really have a connection with you. Your name necessarily doesn't tell them anything, but there they're standing in front of you. When I've been doing the markets, the sales were always much, much better because people ask questions about the place. I can tell them a little story about how I capture it, and it works generally much, much better. So if you have the right market, that the weather is good, it's the right time of the year, for example, just before Christmas, and you have a good selection, you can really make quite a lot. I do markets usually before Christmas. I will be doing them again in a few weeks, and I can make £1,000 to £2,000 a day on sales with these little things. So it can really be quite good. However, there is the downside. As you mentioned, every market is a little bit different, but yes, you will either need booth or tent. So hopefully the market will offer it, or you need to have your own, or you need to rent it. That's the first thing. Then obviously you need to be there first thing in the morning before the roads open for cars. Then you need to set up everything. You need to bring your tables, tablecloths, all the items. And then you're there until it finishes, 4:30, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, depends on the market, all day. And then you need to pack everything and go home. That's one problem. Second thing is with art, we are quite vulnerable. We need to be careful about weather. Basically, if it rains, or if it's really windy, the stuff can get very quickly damaged, and you could end up actually losing more money on the damaged stuff than you do on how much you make. So that's another really worry. And when the market is on, it's really difficult to leave in the middle of it. Like if it starts to rain, everybody wants to leave. So you're kind of stuck. So it's just a kind of downfall of it. But I have to say in general, because I'm quite extrovert, I enjoy the communication with the people. I like to talk to them. I'm quite proud about what I photograph. So I really enjoy that. You can make very decent money with it. Like I say, if you have the right products, you're at the right market, and it's the right time of the year. And yeah, I would definitely suggest everybody trying it. I think it can be really interesting.
Great. Well, I would definitely stop by your booth if I was in the UK. All right, on to our third way to sell your photos would be on either Etsy or different marketplaces online. I've thought about trying to sell maybe digital downloads on Etsy. It's just something on my list of things to think about, but I haven't obviously done it yet. So what would be some comments you have about trying to sell online?
Cool. Let's have a look at it. So there's a difference between selling on marketplace and Etsy and website, and we will talk about that a little bit later. So let's focus more on these platforms like Etsy, but obviously the idea is the same. Now, it can be hit and miss, definitely. I actually have a friend who has I would say agency or maybe advisor on how to do that. They can just give you advice, or they can actually build the whole store for you, and they can prepare all the images and crop them and add all the right text and prepare it. And all of that can be done depending how much you want to invest into it. It can be done by you or it can be with the help. And talking to him, he will tell you that what really depends on is how much you active on it, how often you add new images, also how popular and at the same time how saturated is the photography you're trying to capture. So again, let's say that I'm going to try to sell images from Chichester and people generally looking for pictures of Chichester, which is not really the case. The demand isn't big because it's only 25,000 people. But let's say that it would be popular and I would be maybe one of only 2 photographers on Etsy selling the area, then the chances are that I'm going to sell quite well. And the advantage of Etsy and doing it there is that rather than in the other shops, you can actually sell bigger prints. You can let the customer choose the size, the frames. You can customize the prints and be really creative with it. And once the customer order, rather than you holding stock home and doing all of that, it just basically sends it to the print shop or print factory where they print it, frame it, they pack it into your own packaging and send it to the customer. So it can be really cool. It can definitely work, but it has a few aspects that need to be done right. Mm-hmm. And as I say, just coming back to it, one of them is a demand for that type of photography. I mean, if you're going to photograph a Tower Bridge in London, you're going to be probably the 1,000,001 person who will be trying to sell it there. So the chances are that you're going to sell it are very small, even if the image is beautiful, because you will get stuck into the saturation. But if you have a right, rare captures, I think it can be interesting.
So say I wanted to sell butterfly pictures. I should probably search Etsy to see what other photographers are selling, see how popular it is or isn't. And I could also get an idea of how well people do by looking at their sales and also comparing their photography to my photography and either saying, oh, I could certainly, if this person's selling all these butterfly pictures, I certainly should give it a try. So it just requires a little bit of research.
And it will also give you an idea on how much you can sell them for, because I think some people either undersell themselves or they put the prices too high. I think it's good to do that research anyway to get an idea and just go with it. Yeah. Additionally, I want to say that there are certain people which look like they're selling a lot and they're doing super well. But what you don't understand is that they have a huge online or local presence somewhere and they're just using this marketplace, either Etsy or any, just as their store. So if somebody is, for example, really famous on YouTube because they capture butterflies, for example, and they sending all of their customers and viewers into Etsy. For somebody like you and me, we would be looking at Etsy and we would be thinking, oh, she's selling so much. But actually, she's selling somewhere else. She's just using it to bring the customers and make the purchase. So it's important not to just look at one person, but look at probably across several accounts to get the idea of how well it's doing.
Are there other marketplaces? You're saying Etsy's kind of separate from marketplaces. Are there different options for where else you would suggest trying? Or you mean Etsy is a marketplace?
Etsy, it's like a marketplace. It's just one which is known for being able to sell your photos. Obviously, you can sell on other platforms, but this is one where you can actually really make money with it. I've seen it work. I've seen guys selling Etsy, and probably right behind them is a platform called Fine Art America. If you do it right there, you can also sell quite well. The difference, Etsy is more for people who like to have like a fun, like a butterflies and maybe Highland cows and stuff like that, where the Fine Art America is more like a fine art sunset and pier and lighthouse and more like a elaborate images.
Right. Okay, great. On to our fourth way of selling your pictures. So we're going to talk about trying to get your artwork into hotels, cafes, and places like that. What do you have to tell us about that?
Great. So this one is probably the most challenging when it comes to finding the person to buy it or to sell it, because it will require certain negotiation or talking to people. Everything prior to that should be quite easy. I guess the local shops could be challenging as well, but you just come and you ask if you can, and they either say yes or no. Where with the designers or hotels or cafes or restaurants, it will need a little bit more talking, I guess. And now, again, just like with all these steps, it helps when you have a certain presence in the area already. Maybe you work on some photography projects, or maybe you're just posting these pictures online. I can't stress this more, how much it helped me in the past several times on several locations. By doing that, find your local Facebook groups, post your photos there. Don't try to sell them. Just post it and say, look, this is a place I photograph. because then when you're going to be going to these places, it will make the whole negotiation much easier. So when it comes to these places, designers, hotels, cafes, restaurants, there are two ways of doing it. We talk about it with Holly earlier, actually. One of them is that the place actually buy the photos from you. Now, that's the ideal case. So let's say new cafe opening in town and they would like to have photos from local photographer of the location. So they're looking for 6 big prints. You go, they say, okay, we buy each print from you for $350, $500. They buy the 5, 10 pictures from you and that's it. You print it for them, they put it on their walls and you're done. That's great because A, you have made the money, you don't have to worry about them. And B, it kind of still represents you. The photos are there, maybe you have your name on it and it's displayed there. So that is the ideal option, but still one which is a little bit tricky to negotiate. The second option can work also quite well, and it's usually easier to negotiate. And that's an option where you will display your prints in the space, again, cafes, restaurants, and places. And you will actually add there your card or QR code or website or something where the person can buy the photo. So imagine you're sitting in a restaurant, you're having your dinner, and you're looking around and you really like this photo. So you scan it with the mobile phone, you go and buy it. Now, I have never done the second option, but I have friends around me who done it. Some it work for, and probably it really depends on the place where you have them displayed. Some it work for, some it haven't, simply because maybe it's not just the place where people think about photography. Some of my friends also get their photos damaged because, ketchup or soup ends up on it, or coffee, or people just stand up and scratch it with their jacket or whatever, So I think the way to look at it is the photos that are displayed in these spaces are more as samples, because otherwise you're just going to really stress about them being damaged and dusted and so on. So if you can afford to invest the money in it, have them displayed there, and then order a new one when the person order, then it should be fun as well. So both of these options, both of these systems can work. I've seen it working. However, as I say, the initial negotiation and initial communication with the owners of these places can be sometimes a little bit daunting.
Mm-hmm. So just back to networking, getting yourself known. Mm-hmm. If there's a restaurant that you go to often, you're likely to start learning who the manager is, or, establish friendships that could lead to something with your artwork. I think about
Definitely.
Whenever I'm in a hotel or a doctor's office, I'm always looking around at what the artwork looks like. And I sit there have a conversation in my head with like the doctor saying, do you need any new artwork for your place? This stuff is horrible. Or I'm just staring at a filthy wall while you're sitting on the exam table. So maybe if you just have the courage to just say, hey, you guys need any artwork? Here's my card. Or just with your waitress or waiter's tip, leave your business card there. Maybe they'll look up your photography and you'll get lucky.
Yeah, definitely. I have a friend, Hannes, you know him from Three Nomads. And he is based in Germany. And actually, he say his best clients for prints are lawyers and doctors, because they all need for their office or waiting room like a beautiful big print. So he made hundreds or thousands of euros because of these places. So good point. Those are good customers to sell your prints, but you got to know them and you're going to have the courage to approach them.
All right. Well, we've gone through 4 ways of selling your photos. We're going to take a little break and listen to our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
If you're listening to the LumaCast podcast, then we share something in common. We love editing photos, and we love Luminar. It's almost breathtaking what this amazing tech can do for you. On our website, you'll find countless different things to help you be more creative than you ever thought imaginable. From our photo manipulation masterclass to our power bundle with 986 elements, our essential preset bundle, editing software and extensions to our tutorials. Harness the power at the website at www.cleverphotographer.com/Luminar. Again, that's cleverphotographer.com/Luminar. Now, back to LumaCast.
And we're back. So we're going to talk about our 5th and final way to start selling your photos. And that would be either having your own personal website where you can sell them, and forming an email list. So I'll just tell you about my own personal experience with my SmugMug website. I first had the membership where you could sell your stuff. And I mentioned this, I think, on one of our earlier podcasts, that I got a little bit frustrated, might be the word, about because I do a lot of free cropping on my pictures. So 2 pictures that people wanted, we're going to cut off like basically, main parts of my composition. And I just quickly was like, forget it. I'll just shut this part down and get the cheaper membership for now and just put a hold on trying to sell anything that way. But I could see how it's a great way to sell stuff. So maybe I'll revisit that in the future. And as far as email lists, I don't have one going yet, but I know Clever Photographer has a great email list. So maybe you'll be giving some tips how you could start generating that and kind of growing a customer base, obviously, from that.
Great.
So what do you have to say?
Let's talk about the website then. Yes. So the website sales is always a great idea, and people generally like it because it does not require communication or negotiating or talking to anybody. It sounds like a great idea, right? As photographers, the introverts, we go take our pictures, and then online alone, we build this website, put the photos on, prices, we do all these settings because some people really like to go into these settings, exactly sizes and prices and everything. And unfortunately, I have to say, out of the 5 options, this one is the one which brings the most disappointment to people, which I've seen in past, students, colleagues, friends, photographers around me, simply because you get as much as you put into it. So where, for example, starting from the shops, if you put your stuff there, I guarantee you will sell something because somebody will come and find your prints or puzzles or calendars or whatever cute. On the market, same thing. If you're going to get your work on market and you will have a booth there, somebody will buy it, or maybe even more than somebody will be good. On Etsy, because it's a marketplace, there are naturally people there. They will also discover you. Now, if you be active, they will discover you more. If you will not be active, less. However, on the website, it's like a house in the middle of nowhere unless you do the additional work on it. It can be the most beautiful, it can be the best decorated, but if nobody knows that it's standing there, and nobody knows who it belongs to, nobody will come and nobody will buy nothing. So this is just a little reminder for the website. However, it can work super well, again, when you attach to it the other things. Back to the beginning, back to the first reminder, being active online, being active on groups, and then bringing people to your website will work. For example, I used to work in Scotland on the Isle of Skye. Back then, this location was really popular and very desirable. So what I used to do, I would photograph several pictures a week and I would put them into all the Scottish groups around internet. I would just go, I would not sell nothing. I would just post my photos there. And quite quickly after, when I started to post the photos, people just ask me where they can buy my prints, So one way would be to do on Etsy, but actually you pay lots of commissions there. So the next option was the website. So I created a website, I had my gallery, and when the people click on a picture, they were able to buy it. So in that moment, it started to work. Why? Because I was bringing people from the social media on. And similarly, how it can work with connection with everything else. So for example, people buy something in that local shop, they like it and they want to buy more. So, because at the back of your print, at the back of something, that is your website, they will go to the website and they will buy it there. So this is where I think the website can work really well. Mm-hmm. Now, once the website starts to work, then it's time to think about the email list. Because when people buy stuff from you, they buy your prints and they buy your photography products, I assume that they will be happy with what they get and they will enjoy it. And then maybe once a year, twice a year, every quarter, once a month, it is up to you. It's nice to give them a reminder that you exist. Why? Because you have birthdays and holidays and Christmas and whatever celebration, anniversaries. And people constantly thinking about what to give to these people, right? What to give, not to be always the same. Another mug, another shirt, another whatever. So photographic gift is actually a great idea. It's just people don't think about it too often, So to remind yourself very gently, just to say, by the way, this quarter, for example, a quarter update. This quarter, I've been photographing location here, and here are the beautiful pictures. And at the bottom, by the way, if you would want any of them, they can be printed as a puzzle, shirt, print, whatever you prefer. So this is where you can basically just remind yourself to the people who already bought something from you, and it can work really, really well. It can be done very sweet way. It can be done not intrusive way, and you can just go with it and it can work really well. So website is the main platform where everything should be built from. However, it's important to remember that it will not work on its own. It has to have other connections. Mm-hmm. And combining the website with the email list can work really well because rather than constantly looking for new customers, once you get the, first 100 sales, 150, 200 sales, then you can just gently remind yourself, saying, hey, I have new stuff and would you like to see it? And honestly, I think, so for example, again, in Chichester, if person is looking for a gift for birthdays, and let's say budget is £50, they would much rather buy my print than going on Amazon and buying another, mug or another shirt. It's just they don't really think that, they already forgot that they ever bought anything from me, where the Amazon will be constantly reminding them, look, we have this for you. So little reminder with the email list can really help.
You could always throw a coupon code in there for them too on your website. I saw that on SmugMug where you can offer coupons to lure them in.
100%.
I would do that.
Definitely. Then you're almost going into running your own business, isn't it? Coupon codes and offers and special promotions and go with that. But actually, just before we finish, I have to say that there is never-ending amount of options on how to do that, which platform to build it on and so on. But most people I know who've been successful, they build their websites on Wix, actually. I have no connections with them. I have no affiliation with Wix, but it's really straightforward to do it there. Just simple connecting things together. And within like 2-3 days, you can have a website where you're selling your art. So I think that's pretty cool.
So it sounds like it's not easy. It takes some planning, but you've gone through all these years of becoming a great photographer. So trying to sell them would kind of be a logical next step. Why not give it a shot? So we hope with today's podcast, we'll encourage the listeners to at least try to pick one of these ideas, maybe at least by the new year, make it a resolution and start thinking about how you could sell your own photographs.
Definitely. And if you haven't learned anything other than the reminder that the first thing you should do is start to be active around, start to share your art around, then that's the most important part because that will really help you with anything you will try to do after.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap, unless you have anything else to add.
That's it from me. Thank you very much, Holly. I enjoyed that as always. You guys have a great weekend and bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Now, there's only 3 things left to do. Subscribe to this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Visit our website at cleverphotographer.com/LumaCast to see what we have in store next. And stay creative and keep editing your photos no matter what anyone says.